Hi, this is Rikki Endsley, who's a community manager and editor for opensource.com, a site run by Red Hat for the good of the community. I'm Robin Miller for Phosphorus. So, Rikki.
Hey, Robin.
Let me see. We've known each other for years. That's disclosure here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Rikki, you just won. You're the award-winning Rikki Endsley now, are you not?
Yes, a little bit. Yeah.
Go ahead. You don't have to be all humble for us, but you won as one of the most interesting and useful people in open source, right?
I don't think that's the official title of the award, but I did get an O'Reilly Open Source Award this year, which was extremely exciting for me. And I was on stage with 3 women I know and respect and who have written for opensource.com quite a bit. So that was extra exciting.
Okay, well, I said the description was right off of O'Reilly's website, their awesome website. So
Okay.
they think highly of you. For whatever it's worth. I think highly of you myself. So tell me, what are you doing with opensource.com these days?
Well, per the norm for my career, I guess, and what I've done in all the publications I've worked on for the most part, I'm doing a little bit of everything. I'm the team lead for the editorial team, and I'm a community manager on the site. So I work very closely with our editorial staff and with our other community manager, Jason Hibbets, and with the writers and our community moderators on the site.
So what does opensource.com do? And we will publish a link to it, of course.
Right. Well, we're an online publication supported by Red Hat, but the content on the site is community content. It's not a Red Hat marketing site. What we do is we publish content from members of the community. The editors write some of the content. Our community moderators contribute lots of the content. In May, they contributed about 31% of the content, in fact. And part of that was because 2 of our moderators covered the OSCON event extensively for us, Ruth and Nicole. But in general, they tend to contribute about 25% of the content. And then we usually have about 20 new writers a month. A few Red Hatters write for us pretty regularly, and then we have columnists also. But the content on the site is all over the place as far as open source goes. We cover open source in business, in entertainment, in education, how it's being used in humanitarian efforts, in governments. And then we also have a new channel that we launched last year that's the Open Organization channel, where we're talking about how open source methodologies are being used to run companies now.
So you have quite a few people writing. It's a very rich site. I read it rather regularly, actually, I should admit. And not only that, but I guess let me see, when did we first meet? You just give us the 30-second bio.
Okay. Well, I got started in publishing about 19 years ago, actually, at it was Miller Freeman Publishing at the time, and then it became CMP Media, and then UBM or something. It just kept changing. But in any case, I started in the fulfillment department for some of our magazines. And within about a year and a half or so, I moved over into editorial on Sysadmin Magazine, which at the time was a Unix publication because Linux was still very new. And then, relatively soon after that, the Linux just got huge, and we changed our tagline to the Journal for Unix and Linux Sysadmins. And so that's when I really started getting more involved with Linux, which at the time, of course, was only being used by professionals. It wasn't super user-friendly like it is now, where it's everywhere. But so I was there for about 10 years, and then I moved over to Linux New Media and helped them launch their North American office. And I worked on Linux Pro Magazine and helped launch Ubuntu User Magazine and Admin Magazine, because some of the other people over at Linux New Media were former Sysadmin Magazine editors. And so I was there for a few years, and then I went freelance for a while, and I wrote for a bunch of tech publications such as Network World and IT World, and I worked with Usenix and helped them in the community management area and on their magazine.
I just want to point in here.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you did a great job at Usenix.
Oh,
Really.
thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed it because I had worked with
yeah.
a lot of those people my whole career. A lot of the people who write for those publications and speak at their Usenix events had written this at Sysadmin magazine. So it was very easy transition for me, and I really enjoyed it. And I still am, friends with and work with people I have worked with since the beginning of my career at Sysadmin. In fact, Joe Brockmeyer was one of the several Red Hatters who kept trying to get me to come on at Red Hat, and I had worked with them. I'd worked with Joe back on sysadmin and UnixReview.com at the beginning of my career, and John Masters, who's a Red Hatter, had been trying to get me over, and he had been a columnist for us at Linux Pro. So a couple years ago, I came over to Red Hat, left my dream job as a freelancer, which I actually enjoyed also, but decided to go, work for Red Hat and see how I liked it. And I worked for the open source and standards group and did community evangelism for them, which I helped, the upstream projects with their social media strategy and blogging and that sort of thing. And I did that for about a year. And then this position on opensource.com opened up, and it was hard to leave the OSAS group because I really enjoyed that, but I had watched opensource.com since it first launched and really thought it was a cool site and covering great stories and a lot of fun without the stress of selling subscriptions and ads, which I was kind of burnt out on, by the time I left print publishing, which I love, long live print. But so yeah, I've been over here for about a year now.
Print, you mean the printouts of the websites?
Yeah, right. No, I still love print magazines. So, in fact, Linux New Media is still doing great with print magazines. They just bought Drupal Watchdog recently, and they're publishing it now on top of some of their other print magazines. So, still a huge fan of what they're doing over there, and I stay in touch with all those editors still too.
Do you consider yourself more of an open source person or a free software person, or both?
Both. Both.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's worked well in my career, because I tend to be pretty neutral about quite a few things, and I see different sides of stories, and so that makes it pretty easy for me to work with lots of different people in our field, and help people tell their different stories in the right places. And so if we're not the right platform for somebody's article, for example, I'm happy to direct them to a different publication or site,
Okay.
So, but then, my background is I had an English degree before I eventually went back and got my journalism master's. And so I'm a word nerd, I guess, on top of everything.
Great
a grammar patriot.
Great technical background, right?
I do. At this point, I certainly didn't. When I started at Sysadmin magazine, I had no background at all in technology, and luckily, my experience with customer service and my editing skills, translated well into more of an entry-level editing position. But then I quickly moved into managing editor role because I actually really enjoyed what I was doing. And I think if you enjoy what you're doing, it's pretty easy to pick things up along the way.
Do you ever find yourself hemming and hawing and wondering what they're saying as far as technology?
Oh yeah, all the time, and I'm happy to admit that to people. And I think that often it's hard for us to admit when we don't know something or understand something because of the fear of people thinking we're stupid. But because I've been doing this so long, I know I'm not stupid, and I know that technology is just changing too fast for all of us to keep up with it. And the only way we're going to be able to cover anything accurately on the site is if we admit when we don't know and we look it up and, we check, with resources and we learn and make sure that we've done some fact checking. So, and I will freely admit, on the upstream projects I was working on, I actually admitted in IRC one day that I'd finally had a Linux install that made me cry. And a man on the list was like, yeah, I've had those. And so it was pretty validating because I've found over the years that if you don't understand something, you are not alone. There are a lot of other people that don't get it also, or it hasn't been explained well. And that's an area where if you understand it better, you can do a better job of explaining it to other people. We have just so many weird terms in our field anyway. And I remember the first time I saw fork a child process in an article, and I went into Amber Ankerholtz's office, and she was our editor-in-chief at Sysabin, and I was laughing, and I was like, "Is this for real?" And she was like, "Yeah, and that's how I started learning, was asking about these weird things. And I also remember the first article I edited, the first occurrence of cloud, and that was back at Linux Pro magazine, and I looked it up because I wasn't sure if somebody was using a slang term or, some kind of regional term, or if this was an up and coming thing. And of course, now we hear about it all the time.
Isn't it fun learning constantly?
Oh, it is. I'm sure it's why I'm still in this field, is I'm never bored. I never feel like I got everything done. And we, continue to have cool stories, all the time. And so I certainly didn't, when I started in tech publishing, I thought it was temporary and I would move over a different kind of publishing, maybe news or something, but I just ended up enjoying it so much. So here I am.
Well, somebody, I won't necessarily say who it was, told me once that the great thing about what we did was that we got to call the world's smartest people, and they called us back.
Right. No, it's so cool. I mean, I like I said, even getting that award, when I realized that that 3 of my friends, people I really like and respect, were there with me, it made it that much better. I was already excited, but then I just was ecstatic that, these people I've admired for so long in my career, were up there, and that I was even considered in the same company was incredibly, flattering and humbling,
But don't forget, you have fans too. In fact, I'm one of them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, so, I hope, more than anything, I hope I've made a lot of friends at this point in my career, because I really enjoy that, when I talk about going to a conference or going to work, to me, it's not something I dread. And I know there are so many people, and I've had jobs in the past, that I just dreaded it. Whereas I don't dread a Monday, I'm perfectly happy going to work, and like seeing, people that I, at this point, have known for 10 or 15 or more years,